All right, good morning and welcome to this Chol Hamoed edition of Just Daf It, the Daf Yomi Shir, led by Ben Sealing, Rabbi Ben Sealing, whatever you want to call me. We're learning today Daf Mem Aleph, Yevamos, Daf 41. We have a fabulous share for you today. We're going to be discussing more of the same, the Isers of Achos Chalutza, so the relatives of the Chalutza. And we'll also be discussing a new thing that you can't marry anybody, if they've been previously married. You have to wait 3 months before you marry them. And we'll be discussing why is that. Not just Chalutza can't marry the Yavam, not a Chalutza. Yevama can't marry the Yavam for 3 months. So we see that any woman who's previously married, you have to have Gimel Chadashim, presumably for Havchana, to decide if there's a child born after 7 months to the second husband. We don't know who it is. They have to wait 3 months to know that she's not pregnant, to be assured that the child belongs to the second husband, not the first one. I want to make sure we know who the father is. They don't say, who's your daddy? We'll be discussing more of that in Yef Ben Zion. Let's start from the Mishnah, top of Mem Aleph. We're inaugurating a new edition, the second edition of Art Scroll Yevamos. The second, they have three, they divided into 3 Svarim, into 3 books, 3 separate sections. So we'll be starting number 2 over here. Mishnah, Cholos Yivimto, Venasa Achav Esachosa. You do Chalisa to your Yevama. And then your brother marries her sister, the Chalutza's sister, Umes. And then who dies? Your brother dies. Now, this woman, the sister of the Chalutza, your Mecholitz, her sister, then the sister falls to you for Yibam. Of course, you can't do Yibam with her, you have to do Chalitza. Because again, like we mentioned yesterday, that the Krovim of the Chalutza are Aser, so therefore the Chalutza's sister is Aser. It's only Aser Midrabanan, therefore you do Chalitza, not Yibam. Similarly, if you divorce your wife, and also Achav is Achosa, and then together or afterwards your brother marries her sister, well, Mace, and then your brother dies without kids, raise a Ptura. This woman, she's Pater Minachalitza Nayibom, because she's considered to be the sister of your Grusha, of your wife. Achos Ishto applies as long as even if you're Megarish, your wife, you can't marry her sister as long as that sister that you were married to is still alive. That's never Doraisa. That's why no Chalitza is even needed. Shemeres Yavam Shekidish Achaz Achosa. Shemeres Yavam, she's waiting Yibum Shekidish Echav is Achosa. Now what happens? The brother is Makadish. He didn't marry the sister. He's Makadisher. Once he's Makadisher, he has a Kiddushin, Iriston. He didn't fully marry her yet. So Mishum are going to say, Amru, what do you do? We say to him, before you get married to her, wait till your brother does a Maisa. Once he does Chalitza or Yibum, whatever he does, he can marry her. If the woman dies, there's no reason why he can't marry his wife. But if there's one case where the Yavam actually dies, in which case, without any children, so therefore, the Yavam is still around. He now can't marry either one, because he can't marry his wife, because Achos Zikukasa, he's Mekudeshes to one wife, and he has a Zika to another wife. That creates a problem, Achos Zikukaso, so therefore he has to divorce his wife, because he did Kedushin to her. And Eishes Achav, the one who fell for Yevama, the Yevama that fell for him, the Chalisa has a Chalitza, because he can't marry her, because he's Mekudeshes to her sister. Again, creating a problem. Achos Zikukaso. The Gemara says, Gemara, my v'chein. Why did it say, just like because of Chalitza, the same would apply to Gerushin? It's different. By Chalitza, the sister of your Chalutza, there you do Chalitza, not Yibum. By Gerushin, there's no Chalitza and Yibum needed at all. So Ema Aval Magarish, change the words of the Mishnah. Aval Hamagarish. Magarish, he doesn't need Chalitza or Yibum. Amishlakish Kanshan, Rebbe, here Rebbe taught Achos Grusha Midibre Torah, Achos Chalitza Midibre. So for the sister of the woman you divorced, she's Asr Min Torah to you. The sister of your Chalutza is only Asr Midrabanan. that was Xer Rabbanan to include it. A chalutza is not, the whole concept of chalutza is only the Rabbanan, not the Reisa. Shemeres Yavam Shekidesh. Amar Shmuel. Shemeres Yavam is Mekadesh. Amar Shmuel. Halacha Ger Yehuda Masera. Halacha Val Ger Yehuda Masera. What's significant in Yehuda Masera? He's teaching you, in this case where you're Makadesh a woman, the brother is Makadesh the sister, and you're deciding the Shemeres Yavam is waiting for the Yavam to act, and then he dies. Therefore, you have to get rid of both wives. The Cholitz, the Yevama, and you have to be Megarish, the woman you're engaged to. They ask the following question. Let's say his wife dies, right? He's Mekudeshes to a woman, and then she dies. Now could he marry the Yevama? The Yevama is still waiting for a Chalitza or Yom. Could he do it? They both say he's now mutter to the Yevama because there's no problem. Because once she was Asr b'sha'achas, she remains Asr forever. Amarava, my time with the Rab. What's the reason of Rab? Originally, the was mutter, Benesra, and then she became Asr when he was Mekadesh, his sister. And his wife died. His wife, his Mekudesh, died. Taps related to Harisha, and she goes back to original Heter, and Yibam or Chalitza is allowed. Mesi Rav Hamnuna. Hamnuna said Gimel Achin, a Mishnah earlier. Gimel Achin, Shnam Besu and Sheachayas. Remember all those fun cases where you have the two brothers married to two sisters. So Echad Mufta and the third brother was a bachelor, wasn't married to anyone. Mesa Echad Bivali Achayos, also Ba Mufta Maimer. Let's say Reuven, the oldest brother, died. He was married to one of his sisters, and the Mufna did Maimar, the third brother did Maimar to the Ivam. And then the second brother died, Shimon died. He was married to the other sister. And then his wife, Shimon's wife, who fell Yivam, and she was Achos Kukasa to a Maimar wife, and she died. That Yevama, he did Maimer too, he has to do Chalitza and not Yibam. Might have Yevama Hutra Benesra Chazar Hutra. So they are Risho. Now she becomes Mutarish, she's no longer Achos Kukaso. Ishtik. He was silent, he didn't know what to answer. Rab. Lebassin enough, I got Milo Amart Lay. Rebelezer, he won. You say that Mrs. Rebelezer, he's Amar Kevach, Am the Love Shachs, Benesra Benesra Love Olamis. Rebelezer, this is a reference to the Gemara later on in Yevamos, on Daf Tet, I think, 109. Rebelezer says that if a man marries a woman, he's Megarisher, and then he marries her again, and again he still doesn't have kids, and he dies. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer says that, right, she was Megureshes, right? She was a Megureshes, and then she, now she's Muteres, and once he remarried her, now it's a case of Yibam. After she's Megureshes, she's considered a state of Eishes Ach, you can't marry her. But after he died, so then it's a regular case of Yibam. So once he remarried her, it goes back and didn't have children. There's no Isra Shach. So it says no, she remains Asura. Once she's Asura Shach, she's Asura. Then after thinking about it, Rav said, maybe Rav said, where originally a Shas Nafila she wasn't mutter. Maybe Rav wouldn't say that in this case. Maybe Rav wouldn't say in this case. He would only say in a case where she wasn't Chazia b'Shas Nafila, but here she was Chazia b'Shas Nafila. Mi Amar Hadar Amar in Hadar Amar. Then he went back and said in Vatanya Puslis Rabbi Lezer Amar Mesa Yevimto Mutar Beishto Mesa Ishto. If his Yevama dies, he's married. He's allowed to marry his wife. Mesa Ishto Osa Yevama Choleses Yevemes. But if his wife dies, right, we see it is true that if his wife dies, in this case in our Mishnah, his wife dies, Yevama Choleses Velomis Bemes. So we see Rabbi Lezer actually would argue on our Mishnah. He would say that she does Chalitza and not Yibam, as opposed to our Mishnah, which would say. Actually, Rabbi would agree with her. Say Shmuel Ravasi, who asked her in this case, would say like Rabbi Elazar. They asked her in this case, right? They say once she's asr sha'akas, she's asr olamis. So the Gemara says, "I feel tema karabanan." You can even say that he would say like Rabbanan. Ad kan lo pligi kamif pligi Rabbanan ala derbalazer ala mishum den afila ve'elach lo mitzra alayo. Avahacha the itra afilu Rabbanan modu. Even the Rabbanan who argue in Rabbanan, here the moda to Shmuel and Rav Asi that should be aser. Why would it be aser? Because at Shas Nefila, right, when the brother died, she was aser achos gukas. So then afterward, his wife died. She was mekudeshes, the one who was mekudeshes to died. So therefore, at Shas Nefila, she was aser. So therefore, she's aser alamis. In the case of Elazar, like we said before, at the time of Nefila, when the Yibam happened, he already remarried her, and therefore there's no more Yisra Eishes Ach. So therefore, Elazar, the Rabbanan would be Modeh. He could even agree with the Rabbanan, Shmuel and Rav Asi, and the Rabbanan in that case, because it's Shas Nefila, she was Muteres, so therefore she was Muteres in that case. Elazar was along with Machmir, and he says, she's Asura forever. The Mishnah says, Yevamo lo tachlo tziyabim. Yevama can't do chalitza or yimach yesh la shlosha chadashim until she waits 3 months. We'll explain the Gemara why both of these things. She can't do yibam. It's obvious. Seems to be obvious. We'll explain why chalitza. The Gemara explains. Any other married woman, they can't even get engaged, and certainly not married within 3 months. Whether they were married as a psula or whether they're married as a ba'ula, second marriage, whether they're divorced or their husband died, whether they were actually married or they were only engaged. Women that actually were married, they could actually get engaged in 3 months, they just can't get married. And the ones who got engaged and died, and their husband divorced them or died from the Arirusin, then they can even get married, because we could assume they're not pregnant from their first. It's all dependent, because we assume we have to wait 3 months, but assume that she might be pregnant from the original husband. We want to make sure, know who the father is. So husband Arusos should be Yehuda. Yehuda says that except for in Yehuda, place in Eretz Israel, central section, the Judean hills of Israel. The minhag was Shalibo Gospel. The Gemara explains in Ksubos. The minhag was that even after Erusin, they would seclude, they would do yichud, just so they're familiar with each other, the boy, the groom, and the bride, before they actually got married. They got too familiar with each other, or were worried that they actually had sexual intercourse and could produce a child. How they could do this after Erusin, it seems to be. It's machlok as well. It's also the rice, the rabbanon. It could be even mutter and Yehuda. How could it be mutter? Discuss that in Skubos. Rabbi Yossi is even more mekol and Ashim Yisrael. So he says that all the women, anyone can do Erusin chusbin almana, as in this 3 month period, except in almana b'mnei ibol, because she is mourning her dead husband. So therefore, for a month, she has to be knowing. She has to be knowing avelus. So therefore, I think she has to wait a month. After a month, she could do Erusin. The Gemara is Bishlam Latus Yabim. The Mishnah makes sense. Top here of Mem Aleph and Mebez. Bishlam Latus Yabim makes sense. You shouldn't do Yibam. Shemi have Vlad ben Kayama. The reason we wait 3 months to do Yibam, because if the Vlad has been Kayama, if the child was actually conceived by the first husband, then there's no mitzvah of Yibam. And you're violating the second brother. The brother who's doing Yibam is violating Yisrael Akta, right? And the child can be a mamzer from that union. Elul tachlos. Why not can't do chalitza? My limit every tiyuf Rabbi Yochanan. Amar chalitza muberesh ma chalitza. The reasoning must be, right, that the chalitza performed. The reason you shouldn't do chalitza is because the chalitza is ineffective. Not like Rabbi Yochanan says the chalitza of muberes, if she turns out to be pregnant and the child would die, right, would be effective. Must be like it's not like Rabbi Yochanan, that it's not a chalitza, and we're worried that people think it's a chalitza when in fact it's not a chalitza. Didn't we disprove Rabbi Yochanan at one time for a brisa? So he says lema maha nami tehevet yufta. So what we're trying to say is from this Mishnah should be also a disproof to Rabbi Yochanan. And where it says lo hachahainu taima, this Mishnah is not a disproof to Rabbi Yochanan. Shema yehev vlad ben kayama. The reason over here you can't do chalitza, even technically we hold like Rabbi Yochanan, at least when it is a chalitza, it would be a chalitza, is because what we're worried about, maybe the child will live. And therefore the child will live. And if the child lives, that means there was no necessity of chalitza or yibum, because there was no mitzvah of yibum or chalitza when the first brother had a child. So therefore you did a chalitza, and people will think is a chalitza. Even according to Rabbi Yochanan, it would be invalid chalitza because you don't need to do chalitza over here. People think she's a chalutza when in fact she's not, and she wants to marry a Kohen. She's gonna have a problem. She's gonna need a public announcement that she's not really a chalutza of Israel. So the Gemara says, why don't we make this public announcement? Dilma ika dahavi b'chalitza v'lo havi b'achraza umafsaluha min hakahuna. Because maybe there'll be some people that will hear about the chalitza that won't hear about this public announcement, and therefore they're going to pass her to the guna when in fact she's muteris. For the tenach almana, that makes sense. A woman who the husband died, grusha ma'ikal meimar. Our Mishnah includes a grusha also. She's divorced. Why do you have to wait 3 months in that case? The Gemara says mishum da'afsalam mezonot. The reason a grusha, divorced wife, have to wait 3 months is because she's going to lose mazonos. Right? A grusha we're talking about where she was previously divorced and then she married the brother and then the brother died. And that's the case of grusha. So technically she's asura l'kahuna. She's asura l'kahuna. So even if people think wrongly, she's still asura l'kahuna over here because she was a grusha originally from her original husband. So what's there to worry about? So the Gemara is a different shot. The Gemara is a different reasoning. She's in the mafsala mazonos because she's going to lose sustenance, right? The halacha is that the choletz, the yavam, who's supposed to, the oldest brother, supposed to do yibam, he has to make sure that she has food to eat and she has what to wear from the nechasim of her original husband, and that goes on for 3 months, right? That he can't marry her. So therefore, if you allow a chalitza within 3 months, then she is going to lose out on her mizonos. She's not going to be able to be nourished from her original husband's estate, and she's losing out. Somewhere it says Teinach Nesua. That makes sense by Nesua. She was married to the original brother, deceased brother. Arusa, Grusha, Ma'iklim. She's a Grusha, and she's a Arusa. She's only Mureses. She doesn't get mizonos anyway. Arusa doesn't get mizonos from the deceased brother. Ma'iklim, Ra'el Mishum de Rabbi Yossi. And there's another reason. The whole reason of this Mishnah is because of Rabbi Yossi. It's not in Ma'asav Al Mechashabal Rabbi Yossi. A person came from Rabbi Yossi. Amrlei Ma'u Lachlos Pesach Gimel. Malaya do chalitza within 3 months. Amrlei Lo Tachlos. She said, don't do chalitza. Lo Tachlos Ma'bekach. She asked, why can't do chalitza? What's the difference? Karla of Mikra Zeh, he told her the following pasuk in Yevamos. The Torah says, if the man doesn't want to do Yibam, he can do chalitza, ha'im chafetz. But if he does, it's implied for the pasuk, ha'im chafetz, yabim. If he wants to do, right, he could do Yibam. Only if you're eligible for Yibam, or there's a want, a desire to do Yibam, then there's a possibility of chalitza. If there's no ability to do Yibam, there's no ability to do chalitza. This alone is going to be the subject of the Yom Ben and we'll discuss this a little further. Basically, Rav Chidin, so that's the reason over here. The reason over here is, like we said, within 3 months you can't do Yibam, so therefore, since it's ineligible for Yibam because we're worried about violating the Isra V'Shesach, so therefore, Chalitza is also ineligible, even though technically it could. There's no problem with it. Basically, Rav Chidin asked the following question. Sveikos calls us Yevamos. The Brisa says, women who are Sveikos, we're not sure, that probably this means whether they're married to the original husband. They do Chalitza, not Yibam. My Sveikos. What are we talking? I think about Safek Kedushin. We're not sure if she was originally married to the original brother or the deceased brother. Amai lo misyamos. Why can't you do the right? If he was married to her, so he died without any kids, it's Yibam. And if he wasn't married to her, he could the regular marriage. He could do it. It must be this Bryce is talking about. We're not sure. He's Makadesh, one of 2 sisters. Was lost. We forgot it. We were not able to figure out which one he was Mekadesh, Kani Choletzes, and then he died. Choletzes, it says the Bryce that she does Chalitza. Haki Hashta Hasa, so you see Choletzes, and there it's ineligible to do Yibam, right? You can't do Yibam over there because, right? Because if you marry, if it's the woman that you're Makadesh, that your brother was Makadesh, so fine, you can do Yibam, and if it wasn't the one, then it's a problem of Achos Zigukaso. You have a zika to one, you have a zika to a sister, you also to the other sister. So therefore, the suffix with the yibum, so we go l'chumra. You can't do yibum, you can only do chalitza. So why don't we say over there it's not eligible for yibum, it's not eligible for chalitza? The word is hakash to hasam yabel yavi omer halakidesh pas chalitza yibum. If we would know, which we just don't know the fact, Eliyahu would come and tell you, identify the one who's Makadosh, your brother's Makadosh. Even if Eliyahu would come and say that the first wife wasn't pregnant from the first husband, would we care what Eliyahu says? You have Minallah, we do Yibam Haktana, Labasi who is included in our Mishnah that Aktana, she's a minor who was married, she can't get pregnant. There's included in our Mishnah, she can't do Yibam also within 3 Chadashim, even though there's no eligibility to do Yibam, even though a problem of Eishes Ach, because the child for sure is not going to be, she's not going to become pregnant. Still, we don't let her do Yibam. So if that's the case, what's the reason then, right? If a Ketana, why is that? If the whole reason we're assuming of Yibam, right, is because we're concerned that the child might belong to the first husband, in which case there's no construct of Yibum and Chalitza. You're marrying your brother's wife when there's no mitzvah of Yibum. So that applies only if there's a possibility that his wife is pregnant. If he's not pregnant, Ketana, she's not, so then incapable. So why is there, right? There should be allowance to do Yibum, and therefore there should be allowance to do Chalitza. Why? We assume for sure, the Gemara assumes for sure, that by Ketana, there would be no eligibility to do Yibum. We still haven't figured out the reason. So the Gemara is backtracking to the reason. If you want to find out the answer to that question, stay tuned for Yom and Sion coming up right